How do I get my little camera off of here? What's up, baby? All right. How do I make these equal size? There we go. All right. Wait for her to pass by. Okay, cool. Yo, what's up, everybody? This is Marks McDuffie. I am the owner of Aion Trading and the host of the Live, Love, Live podcast, joined again by our co-host and the head of Aion Training on the coaching side, Sean Clifford. What's up, Sean?
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me back. I'm glad that I can be a repeat offender on this one.
We'll keep you on here. Oh no, we'll just cut that part out. All right. What we're gonna do for today is we are gonna go through some of the Q&A that our members did on their monthly Q&A forums. This is sometimes some of our favorite like podcasts and videos to shoot because we get to answer directly the questions that you all are having. So if you haven't filled out the Q&A form, no worries. You still have time to do it. So go do it right after you listen to this thing. For those of you who have filled it out for the end of February, we'll pop in and we'll answer some of your questions. So, Sean, you want to take this first one? And we have what weight exercises increase muscle mass more? Increase reps or increased weight?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I mean, we can obviously get into the weeds as fitness professionals, but I think kind of what's the point of speaking a bunch of scientific jargon that will make a ton of sense? So I'll kind of simplify it to this. I mean, the question goes to, I think an easier question is when I'm in the gym, should I be focusing on doing more or lifting more? Right. That's kind of what the question seems to be boiled down to me. Um, Personally, it's kind of a tough answer, but I think a good balance of both is a really good thing to shoot for. I mean, ideally, just in a very simplified manner, just to shoot through it. If you want to build total body, more overall strength, then you want to go for higher weight, lower reps, right? And then if you kind of drop the weight a little bit, but get more of the reps in, that gets more into the hypertrophy, is a big word that you'll hear kind of thrown around of increasing size, right? In my mind, I think the most beautiful marriage is both of those things together, right? Picking a relatively challenging weight for a relatively challenging rep scheme as well. And I think that's where you get kind of the beauty and kind of the melding of both worlds. Um, I think again for this question, it's just coming in every day and then just kind of reevaluating like what do you want that day. The beauty of the program that we do here is that you do get kind of both of those things. And every day is kind of uniquely tailored to you and how you're feeling that day. So if you come in and maybe today's the day where you're like locked in, you're like, I need to lift heavy weight, and then it doesn't happen. The program allows you to kind of curate it to how you're feeling. So that way, again, we're looking at sustainability in lifting, not necessarily just banging our head into the wall and trying to be the strongest man in 2 years,
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point because it is right. Like, because the answer is both. Like if you have all of one, then we're leaving a lot on the table on like these muscle fibers and what these pieces of muscles need. When you have all of the other, we're leaving a lot on the table of that other one. Right? So it really is kind of both. But I love that kind of subtext of, but knowing that that is relative, right? Because one day you sleep great and you may do 40 pounds and like that feels really heavy and you do 40 pounds for 5 reps and that's amazing. And then the next week you feel like you slept like shit and you can only do 25 pounds for those 5 reps, but that was still the heavy for you. So yeah, I think for people who are at Ion, we kind of bake that into the system already. But for those of you who are listening that aren't currently with us, the best thing is going to be a mixture of, hey, some really heavy, like only 3 or 4 reps, and then some higher, like 8, 10, 12 reps that are kind of in that junction. You don't need to do, can I put this out there? You don't need to do 100 reps with 5 pounds and you're shaking your arms. No. You don't need any of that shit. But just like lower, like he said, 3 to 4, and some highers as well.
Yeah, I think that simplifies it to a way that's digestible for everybody.
Yeah, and making sure that it doesn't have to become this either or when it comes.
Never.
To, yeah. Um, All right, let me check out the next one. Nope, none. I'll think of some once I click submit. That's probably better. Yeah, so I'll take this next one, which is this is kind of what I would want for the strategy check in for. So I'm thinking about this long term. First off, already great. If I am to strength train for the rest of my life, do I hit the balance of gaining muscle and strength while also keeping, for lack of a better word, some curve and some softness? This is from one of our ladies at the gym. I know I'm
Yeah.
not going to bulk up overnight, but wondering about it long term. Is there anything to add or take away to maintain that balance? And so I think this is a
Yeah.
common question that we get a lot of times from our women that are, getting into strength training for one of the first times or one of the first times in a while, which is, hey, like, I do want to get stronger. I do want to have some nice arms and some muscle tone, but I don't want to lose, some of my softness. And while that isn't every single woman that we work with, it is, there is a section of them that like that is a very important thing. And I think the good thing to realize is that you really don't have to worry about that, right?
No.
Like the way I kind of tell it to people is there are a lot of super testosterone 20-year-old dudes that are trying their best to get super hard and shaped up, and they really just can't, right?
Yeah.
So with some of our ladies, right, like you don't really have to worry about going too far on that scale of becoming more muscular than you may want to be, because just like genetically it isn't too likely to happen without some type of performance enhancing drugs, right?
Right.
And for we've seen ladies that like go into that and that's what they want to do and they pursue bodybuilding and that's like an awesome lane for them to kind of go into. But for a lot of our members, they don't fall into that. They just really want to feel stronger. So I think unless you're doing, I would say, like 6 days a week of training. There's, you're taking all the supplements like, creatines or even further than that, really, and starting to get into some of the like the performance enhancing drug side. It really isn't something that you'll have to worry about. It's more likely that you'll end up, having a good amount of muscle and then still having a lot of the, to quote what was used in that, the curve or the softness that you already had initially, you just feel even better in it.
Yeah.
Is what we've seen for the most part.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other parts you want to touch on that, or you don't have to?
No,
Yeah.
I think that the best part about that I've seen with a lot of members is just the journey of like worrying about to that point, which it is a valid concern that I think a lot of people have. Maybe they do express it, or maybe they don't express it. Of like not wanting to lean out, bulk up, and look hyper masculine and like keep some of the femininity that they enjoy. And I think the biggest thing that you really learn as you continue to get stronger is you get to inhabit the strength in your body. You know what I mean? It's not all of a sudden like you're going to have delts popping out of your ears, but like things get easier in life, And I think that's the beauty of strength is it becomes very internal, and then it's like, how does that transition to, everything else in my life? But I think to your point too, I wouldn't worry too much about looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's like a big like breath out for the
Yeah.
people that are in that subsection, but also give some clarity to, hey, like the people that may want to go into that other section of going that route too. So
Right.
all right, for the next one on here, we'll go. Um, uh, what to do with and for my knee problems when I'm doing lower body workouts. So just kind of, hey, like how do I work around that when I'm dealing with some knee issues or just pain?
Yeah. I think this is a really good one. And I think that, there's many approaches to it. I really like to kind of take the approach that I take personally on the floor when I'm working with clients. We had a great little single leg squat day today, where obviously that's going to exacerbate some existing knee issues, right? And I think kind of the first thing that I would say that I personally love to tell clients here, and you can definitely take outside of this space as well, is just the idea of like meeting your body and your joints where they're at, right?
Yeah.
And letting them dictate the intensity and workload that you expect of them. I think oftentimes like looking at the goal and then looking at what you're doing to get to the goal is a really good way to address knee pain in a very simple kind of holistic way. And by that I mean, like, if you're getting asked to do a single leg squat and it's hurting your knee, then I'm always quick to give regressions or tell clients, like, let your knee dictate how intense you go today,
Yeah.
right? And it goes back almost to that first point of, like, really getting away from kind of like scheduled, like, I need to do this there, I need to do this here, and really taking stock of, like, does my knee feel structurally okay? And even more than that, like, we talk a lot of times, like, they're starting to find more and more scientifically that mobility, flexibility is just kind of a symptom of feeling safe and secure.
Yeah.
And I think strength is the exact same. If you're asking your knee to perform a single leg squat and you inherently are worried, concerned, what's the point in pushing through that? You know, it's like, I really love the idea, especially with knee stuff, of just starting slow, starting small, and building big, right? And just kind of piling up those small victories of, like, hey, I was able to do 10 goblet squats today without knee pain. What do you think that does for you psychologically and also physically, in terms of your body kind of reconnecting pathways of how the knee works, right? So, for that question, there's a lot of avenues you can go down, but I think the simplest one that a lot of people kind of forget or just don't even know to do is just to check in and make sure that the body's not screaming in pain when you're doing an exercise. And if it is, talk to a coach or find something else that works for you in that moment.
Yeah, and I think that's such a big one. Like we'll get a lot of times from, our newer members that they're not used to working with us, that
Yeah.
we work with people 40 plus. So like your D pain is garden variety for us.
Yeah.
They've been somewhere before where the guy was like, "Oh, like you have knee pain, like just grind through it. We're gonna have you do these box jumps and burpees."
Right.
And if they didn't, there was some shame in there. So I think that's such a good point of like, hey, like you don't have to. The goal isn't to get it done tomorrow. It's just to
No.
check in with the coach, start where you can, and like you mentioned as well, it's hey, like if you have like the start small, ask a coach where you need to start, and then
Yeah.
build from there.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
give your body that safety in that smaller movement so you can progress.
Right.
Because
Yeah, I think it's as simple as that. Simple, not necessarily always easy, but definitely simple. Just
yeah,
keeping it small and building big.
and I'll say the last point on that is another big point that I like about starting it small is that it takes away the fear from the big thing, which stops people from ever doing anything about their knee or whatever
Right.
injury. And then
Right.
5 years, it could have been all better. You feel strong, but instead, it feels even worse, and we've made no progress. And that's a really like kind of scary spot to be in for members. So, I think
Yeah.
it's a really good question.
Yeah.
All right, let's see what's next one on here. Um, Yeah, so I think this for this next one, sometimes I want a little bit more of the weight work that we had in the past. At times, I'd like to know how to use the new system to work more on strength. Um, and I think that's a great question, right? Like as we transition to the newer system and the new way of training, like how do I adjust my goals within this thing? And I think that's the way that you put it together has been really great on that because it allows some of that, like for it to kind of still be tailored towards you and
Yeah.
worked around like what you really want to focus on. And when we come to really focusing on strength, it really always comes down to, um, you know, what are you doing on that, right?
Yeah.
So, all the exercises, we don't really prescribe weight too often. We don't prescribe like how much you should be putting on the bar unless we see you doing some shit and we're like, all right, come on, like you got to go heavier than that.
Yeah.
Um, but in that, like if you are really focusing on strength, and like we said before, like you want to make sure that you're incrementally pushing yourself every session. So
Yep.
that's the big one is like, hey, if last week I went in there and I had, we were doing incline bench press and I did, 70 pounds, then okay, like the next week, I don't need to make this huge gargantuan jump.
Yep.
I should be trying to hit 75 pounds by the end of that session. And then the next week, I should be trying to hit 77.5 or 80. And then the
Mhm.
next week, 82.5. And it's just kind of, keeping in your brain like that, consistent, like, I want to build this up. And for a lot of our members, or a decent amount of them, they still do the tracking on Trainerize.
Yeah.
I think that's a helpful way to keep track of, hey, like, am I adding that 2.5 to each side of the bar, that 5 pounds every single week so that I can continue to push my body so it has to adapt and get stronger?
Yeah. That's a great point. I think that that's the only thing I would add is that strength is very unique in the way that it's immeasurable. And adaptation is also immeasurable, and you have to continue to push adaptation for it to happen, right? So if strength is the goal, then the joke has always been like, if you want to get really strong, you got to get real nerdy. You know what I mean? You got to track, you got to get a spreadsheet, and again, we move away from that a little bit just because strength isn't always a universal goal, and also I think tracking can be a little overwhelming too at times,
Yeah.
right? Because it inherently does have the possibility with progressive overload of you hitting that kind of physical limit that is going to happen with adaptation, where there's no longer a rise and a rise and a rise, and you have to get creative with strategy. Now that being said, like that happens at very, very advanced levels of lifting. We're talking like, powerlifting at the highest level, stuff like that. But I think that, again, tracking and again, you taking ownership of what you want your session to be, I think is a really powerful thing in this new system. What Marcus and I talked about in development was like creating a system where everybody can come in and get done what they want to in the day,
Yep.
right? Which I think is really important because, again, it's like thinking of strength in a very abstract term, right? In this point, this question, it's like, how do I add weight and see measurable strength, right? For
Yeah.
some people, feeling stronger is doing the mobility stuff and being able to do a move, maybe at not a heavier weight, but with more competency or comprehension, right? That's a big thing that I think in this new program. It's like, yes, we could prescribe you the weights, the sets. I could push weight on you. I could put this on the bar. But at the end of the day, are you becoming a more intelligent and learned lifter, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what I'm passionate about as the head coach here and working with clients is making sure that you feel more in control of the process from start to finish, right? Because that's true lifelong strong. God forbid you have to move to Montana for job and you don't have, Coach Sean and Coach Marcus anymore. You leave as an intelligent lifter who can go to, Montana's finest gym and take care of yourself and not fall into the traps that a lot of people get into.
And I think that's a great point. And it's I will say in the past, like it's temporarily it's frustrated clients because
Yeah.
when they say like how much should I do, I go, well, how much did you do last week?
Yep.
Or
Yeah.
or how much should I do, or how that last set felt for you,
Right.
and then it kind of gets them into like being and taking ownership and autonomy in their
Yeah.
process within
Yeah.
like the helms of Ion. So I think my favorite thing as a coach is when someone goes to like a class with their friend and they're like, oh man, you should have saw their deadlift form, like they didn't have their
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
abs tight, right? Because like that is the actual goal of what we do. It's not to pat you on the back and say, hey, like, you're going to do it exactly like this and this way and this and this. We'll do most of that, right? But there is going to be some questions of, hey, like, how do I help you gain ownership of your process? So, like you said,
Right.
if you have to move or a life circumstance comes up or whatever else, like, I don't want to make it so that you can't feel confident in your journey without
Right.
us. I think
Right.
that's a huge piece.
Yeah.
Um, all right, let's see here. Next one on here. Uh, uh, um, okay, so this next one is: are there any little known eating or nutrition tips, things that go beyond the basics? Oh man, all right, go ahead. You can kick this one off on this one.
Ooh, yeah, I mean it's a big question, right? I think everybody has tips, everybody has tricks. I mean, you could Google search and read for 10 years all the tips and tricks that people have. And again, I know, I think when people ask this question, they always just want like the easy answer or like the answer that's going to fix it all. And I think again, the hard part about it is there's not one size fits all. I think we talked about this in our last podcast, and I stand by it. Just of you have to see what works for you, and you have to tailor things to things that are sustainable for your body. Because
Yeah,
a tip that works for me, and I give it to you, might not work for you. And then I don't want you to feel like you're the bad guy because you didn't make this tip work, right? Sometimes like a big one nowadays is like protein intake, right? And I know that can be very, very overwhelming for women in the fitness space, right? Because you look at the protein intake and it's gargantuan, right? for me, I can eat 200 grams of protein and like be like, how I'm still hungry. Like, what happened, right? But I even talk to people I'm close to in my family about helping them up their protein intake. It seems just like a mountain out of a molehill, like something that I can never conquer. So I think, again, you get these tips, you get these tricks, and I'm sure Marcus might have one or two for you, but I would default to, again, take these things, look at them, try them, and if they don't work, you're not the bad thing. It might just be a bad tip or a bad trick.
Yeah. I think that's a good point, right? Because like if we go like, all the things out there,
Yeah.
there's probably like everything out there has worked in the past for someone. Yes. But will it work for you? Maybe not. And I will say, like, I mean, Sean, you know me, like I am the most like tippy tricky, like, oh, how do I get a red light therapy thing? And then I'm
Yeah.
taking, BPC and all this stuff. But that's because like I had to spend a lot of time, there was a big moment in there where I wasn't focusing on the basics and I was trying to cover it with tips and tricks
Yes.
and it
Yeah.
wasn't working.
Yeah.
It wasn't until like I really got the basics down of, hey, like 7 to 9 hours of sleep,
Yeah.
drinking enough water, protein and veggie at basically protein at every meal, veggie or fruit at almost every meal. And it's like until you have those four down, you haven't really earned the right, And I'm hesitant to say it like that, but it is kind of like you got to do those first, or else the tip
Right.
tricks are like, it's a broken car, but you get it a paint job. It's still not going to run.
Right. I mean, that's a great kind of example, right? It's like worrying about the frosting on the cake when you forgot to put eggs in it. You know what I mean? It's the same idea of like the tips and tricks are an accessory to when you've mastered the basics. And to be honest, like that's again, it sounds simple, but it's not easy. Like, I mean, I still struggle with the basics of
Yeah.
sleep, hydration, vegetables, different protein intake, stuff like that. So, to this question, what I would really say is before you look into the tips and tricks bag, make sure that the base of the pyramid is sturdy, stable, and like ready to rock,
Yeah.
and then build your way up from there. And the beautiful thing is, as long as you have the base, to your point, you can slot in different tips and tricks and then dead them if they don't work, with less of an overall kind of catastrophic event if it doesn't work, because you're always going back to the things that work. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? You already have that base. So if, all of a sudden, eating 5 sticks of butter a day that somebody online said would work for you doesn't work, that's okay, because I'm still sleeping 7 hours a night. I'm not going to fall apart,
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that that just to like go on this one a little bit longer, I think that's
Yeah,
what happens a lot of time
totally.
with like keto or something like that, or like these no
Yeah.
carb diets, is that people think like that is the tip or trick that like is getting them the success, and it's like no, that just drew you closer to the basics. When you do keto,
Yes.
you have to focus on protein at every meal. You have to focus on fruit and veg at almost every meal. You're cutting out, eating a primarily carb meal, right? And so it moves you closer to the basics, and that's where the success is. And I think a lot of times
That's
when
my
people
work.
say, yeah, they're like,
Yeah.
oh, I can't do keto anymore, so I'm just, and then everything falls apart for them.
Yeah.
But they didn't realize that all they had to do was go a little bit towards the basics and maybe just add some rice and some other carbs and bread back in, and they
And
would
you'd
have
be
been
fine.
good.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
that's such a good point there.
Yeah.
Um,
So sorry to kind of answer that question with a not real answer, but I just think it's so important to continue just kind of putting that idea and abstraction of thought out there, because it's so important to sustainability. As somebody who's lost 120 pounds, like I wish I could have told myself that at the beginning over and over and over again. I would have saved myself so much emotional trauma, so much stress, so much frustration, so much of me feeling like I was the problem, and it wasn't. It was, again, to your point, and I love it, to be honest, of not earning the right to do the flashy stuff if the basic stuff isn't taken care of.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's trust me, for the person who submitted that, the more that you buy into that, the faster and faster the results will kind of kick in. So
And you don't need the tips and tricks. That's the funny part. You know what I mean? Like, You don't need any of the flashy stuff. When you do the basic stuff, it kind of just falls in line. The body's an amazing, amazing machine in that way.
Yeah. All right. Last one we have here. I just saw this one. I actually wasn't going to include it at first, but I think it's an important one, and it's
Great.
the
Good
thing.
ball.
It says maybe some yoga moves for better sleep. And I'm gonna move around on that because I think the question is how do I get better sleep?
Yeah.
Um, and like the proposed solution is yoga moves, and I think we'll just use this last one just to go over,
Yeah.
some like things about sleep, and some things I know about sleep to kind of help. So if I had to break it down to a couple easy things, it would be one, try to go to sleep and wake up about the same time every day, right? So our circadian rhythm is getting taken care of, and it's easier for my body to say, I should be asleep during this time. The person who left this worked in the medical field for many years, so your
Yeah.
sleep schedule is beat up. So it's time to do some TLC on it. The second one is, like try to avoid blue light at least like an hour before bed. So if you are going to be on your phone, I got these funky like blue light blocker glasses. They make me look real silly, but they allow me to go to bed faster. So try to like stay away from as much blue light as possible 1 hour before bed. And the last one is just within 30 minutes of waking up, get some type of sunlight, right? So it's all around like if you want to have better sleep, um, like set it so your circadian rhythm is set and starts to understand when I should be entering sleep and when I should be entering like my more awake, more alert phases. The very last one that I'll put in there is magnesium. A lot of people are super deficient on that. And if you just start adding in some magnesium to your day, like your sleep will improve, your energy throughout the day will improve, but also your body's ability to, to digest and take in what you're eating and actually use it is going to improve as well. So those are my big four pillars. If those four hit, then we can talk about yoga in person. But yeah, those are the big four for me there.
Yeah. Again, for mine, I think the biggest thing that helps that helped me a lot personally, but also has helped people that I've worked with to kind of re-regulate their sleep is just again understanding that sleep, like anything else, is a habit, right? Sleep is like fitness, it's like diet, it's anything, it's a habit. And I think consistency in showing up for a habit makes or breaks the habit, right? We talked about this a little bit last week with diet, and I think for sleep, again, simplifying it in your brain to get away from all these like things I need to control and all these things that I need to stress out about, and instead just being like, listen, if sleep is a habit and I know that every night, like I, want to go to bed by 9, work back from there, right? It's the same way if you're like, okay, I want to eat X amount of calories in a day for a specific goal. Like I have to work backwards and do this to get there. Sleep is the same thing, right? And for me, what's really helped is being disciplined. And it's the hardest part, right? It's the hardest part, especially when life gets busy, right? You have kids, you have family, things are going over the place. But the more you can really think of sleep as kind of necessary. I think that like sleep often gets deprioritized in our culture, and I won't get too deep on that, but it's a real travesty because if you're not sleeping enough, you can't show up for the things in your life to make the change that you need, right? I always say like in this order, like the things that matter the most, in my opinion, are sleep, then diet, and then training. You know what I mean? Because if sleep is off, right? We've seen all these studies now that like lack of sleep leads to an increase in ghrelin. It leads to more hunger through the day, right? Your training is going to decrease. You're not going to be motivated. And so I think with sleep, it's like be disciplined and set a routine and then stick to the routine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the routine that works is the routine that you do. And I'll just say mine real quick. Like I wind down, usually I love, again, one of my big mentors, Dan John, always says like, I try to go to bed 2 hours after the sun sets and then wake up, at least an hour before the sun rises, which that might not be sustainable for a lot of people, but it simplifies it, right? It gets dark. You're naturally going to start to feel sleepy. And it's like, what can I do to get out of my body's way to fall asleep? So it's like screen time's a big one. I really don't love eating right before I go to bed because I feel like digestion really messes with my ability to sleep.
Mm.
Temperature, really, really big one that I've seen.
Yeah.
You know, if it's hot in your room and you're hot under the covers, like that's an issue. And then to your point, Marcus, the thing that helped me, and this is kind of a tip and trick that you can try once the sleep schedule gets sorted out, is I just took a little bit of electrical tape and covered all of the lights in my room because I need really dark, and I can't wear an eye mask. It bugs me, dude. I've got to flick it off like after 30 minutes. But I just put a little black tape over every light in the room. So when the light goes out, the main light goes off, I tell Alexa to turn it off. Boom, pitch black.
Yeah.
Um, so those are some good things to think about. I think the thing too, the last one that I'll lead with because I have some experiences like learning to navigate sleeping with a partner too. I think that can be a tough one, right? Especially if you're on different rhythms and different systems. But again, it's just a conversation of like, what do you need from this? What do I need? And how do we navigate it so that you're not messing my sleep up and I'm not messing your sleep up? I mean, I get up 3 hours earlier than my partner, and it's like I have to be caring and cognizant that like I'm not going to make a lot of noise or turn lights on and help her get the quality sleep she needs too. Because sleep is, like I said, it's life, dude. If you don't have it, I know I turn into a monster. So
Yeah, I think that's a good. That's oh man, a lot of really good points there. The last one of like being able to have those conversations around it, I think is a huge one, and I think people downplay sometimes. Like sometimes it's like having a really good conversation with your partner about that thing is kind of sometimes a step in between like where you are right now and getting a little closer to where you want to be. But I think another thing you mentioned in there is not stressing on these things, and I think the overall that we've kind of seen with this whole like Q&A today is that the mindset and the way we view these things has to always be, am I getting closer?
yeah,
Right? Like it can't be, and it is too easy for, and we hear it all the time, like, oh, like I saw this thing, and like I can't, cut out all the carbs, or I'm not getting 9 hours, like that feels impossible.
yeah,
But people don't realize that like 6 months ago they were getting 4 hours of sleep, and now they're
right.
getting
Now
five
they're
and
getting
a half.
seven, right, or whatever, right? Yeah,
They're still in this like, oh my god, I'm not there. And it's like, no, you are exactly where you need to be. So our big takeaway point, at least for me for today, is realize where you were, compare that to where you are.
yeah,
Don't worry about the future. Realize where you were, compare that to where you are, and that is the measuring stick. So if you're getting stronger every session, great measuring stick. If you're sleeping 30 minutes more than you were 7 months ago, great job, right? Because it's the momentum and that focus on the positive and what I'm doing right that
yeah.
alleviates the need for us to have a million tips and tricks to continue to like drive us forward in this process. So, uh,
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You know, I do some, backcountry navigation, compass, stuff like that. And one of the things that I love that I take from that I put to life is whenever you're trying to navigate to a new point, the thing you can never forget to do is see where you came from, because that oftentimes will tell you more about where you're going than anything else in your arsenal. And it's like, why is that not relatable to life? You got to look back to see where you're going because it makes it relative, and it makes it feel again not like an endless journey, but somewhere with a destination. You
yeah,
know?
hell yeah. All right, my peeps. Well, I want to say we're gonna cut there. We've got through all the Q and A's. There were a couple more like very specific ones that we could shoot over a text to answer as well. But if you enjoyed today's episode, I want to tell you everyone about our brand new program that I'm pretty excited about. We crafted this thing, and it's called Spring into Fitness. And our whole thing was, and this may not be for you, it may not be for everybody. That's okay. But the whole thing was, we were tired of all these like fat loss, fat loss, fat loss challenges that are so typical in the industry. And Spring into Fitness is all around how do we get you to work on the things like your physical health, yes, but also your mental and your emotional health so that you can show up better in your life, right? The amount of times that people are doing so much right on the physical side when it comes to workouts, but they don't take care of the mental emotional side. So they end up binge eating, they end up emotional stress eating, they end up self sabotaging, whatever else. So the goal of this challenge is to kind of like get your feet wet in the water of that overall personal development as opposed to just the fitness side only, right? So we're really excited to kind of like step into that. And if you are interested, all you have to do is just send us a text, say I'm interested in the spring program, and I'll take care of the rest. That's all you have to do. Text, I'm interested. We'll take care of the rest of everything. So want to say thanks again, and we'll see you all next week.
All right. See y'all.